And okay, go ahead.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Ayuna from mangoSTEEMS Japan. And thank you for joining the session with Paul, who is the co-founder of Entertaining Learning. Today, he's going to introduce Lingua Attack and help steer us on why this is so important to share interests between teachers and students using authentic video to build a learning community, and how Lingua Attack can work effectively in a flipped classroom. We also owe Paul a huge thank you for creating today's conference competition and for his generosity. Thank you, Paul. Please find details on the live schedule page on Eventzella. Thank you again, and I'll pass over to Paul.
Thank you, Ayuna. Okay, well, it's 5:30 in the morning here in Paris, and very happy to be with you. It's an early start, but it's been a great conference so far, and I want to get right into it. As you heard, it's quite all right to interrupt me. I want to keep this as interactive as possible. So please, I think it's valuable also if you share your your experience, your feelings, your classroom management style with us, and that way we can really have a very nice dialogue and learn from each other. Okay, can we test Satomi and Cheiko? Can we test that your audio works? You would have to unmute.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear clearly.
Wonderful, and I can hear you. Very good. And same for Cheiko, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes, I can hear you.
Fantastic, great.
Thank
Are both of you? What type of learners do you teach?
Hi, I'm Cheko. I teach university student in Japan.
Very good. Okay, great. Great.
Local national university.
Very good. Very good. Okay, great. We have a lot of university students in our in the people who use our platform Lingua Attack. And Satomi, the same thing. Also, university students.
Oh no, I teach junior high school from the first grade to the third grade. Right now, I'm teaching the first grade.
Okay, so these are what 14-year-olds or?
Yeah, mostly 14 years old.
Okay, great. Okay, we have plenty of 13, 14, 15-year-olds, both in South America and Europe. Not yet in Japan. I hope soon. Okay, so let me jump into the presentation and share my screen. You can tell me if you see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, great. So I will start by telling you a little bit about English Attack. Hold on. Here, how do I advance the?
Just if you click on it once, you should be able to use your right arrow keys.
Okay, I'm a little bit. Okay, here we go. Oh yes, I just had to click on it once. Correct. Okay. So the company, Entertainment Learning, I co-founded this with a former colleague of mine in a big corporation. And so we started this in 2009. Between the both of us, we had worked in the area of computers, video games, satellite television, myself with CNN. We've worked in online media, in mobile entertainment, and in edutainment. So we bring a experience and this area.
Are you hearing problem Wi-Fi?
Can you hear me?
Oh, I think you're back. Paul? Uh-oh. Well, hold on a second. Internet connections are sometimes
Is there
tricky things.
a problem with the audio? Sorry.
Oh, okay, you're back. We lost you for for about what, 10 seconds? Maybe
Yeah,
your
it could
audio
be
was kind of chopping in and out. There we go.
Yeah, it's it may be an audio a connection slightly connection issue. Is that better now?
You're fine now again. Yep. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, good. So yeah, so as I was saying, we come to online learning from a quite a varied background in technology and media and gaming. We spotted when we created the company in 2009, we really were kind of surprised to see that there was nothing for teens and very young adults. You had a lot of platforms out there for young children and for business people, but we really were not able to find anything which was fitting with the motivations and the interests of people in that sort of teens and young adult area from about 13 to 25. So we decided to use our background and our experiences to create something specifically for this audience, based largely on authentic content. And we launched the first version of it in 2012. And today it's used all around the world by over 2,500 schools, language institutes, and universities. Let's go on. And just so I can remind you, there is a prize draw associated with this presentation. And the easiest way for you to enter is simply to go, whenever you can, to lingua-attack.com and create your free teacher account, which is a trial account. And the activation code is simply JALT 2020. So that's quite easy to remember. Well, let me start by saying that the obviously, the whole COVID pandemic has, in my view and in the view of other people, really forever changed the educational landscape. It was already changing, for a good 10 years, I'd say, all the way back to when Khan Academy started becoming popular on YouTube. You've got Coursera, you've got in India Tata Interactive. So there were a lot of people bringing innovation to the area of education thanks to online technology. What then happened in really starting February, March of this year was that all of a sudden there was this global pandemic, the first truly global pandemic since the Spanish flu in 1918. And this pretty much simultaneously affected nearly 2 billion students, high school, primary, university, all ages, across schools pretty much worldwide. And so there was a massive and almost panic-driven switch to online learning of various types, which, as dramatic a situation as that was, really constituted a sort of instant global experiment in digital education. And so, through trial and error, we've learned more about online teaching and learning in the last 6 months than we have in the last 10 years. And what's easy to forget is that, through the need to somehow replicate the teacher and student experience purely from a visual and communications point of view, there was a massive recourse to video conferencing platforms that were not really designed for education. The schools had to somehow figure out how to get the teacher in front of the students. Only things like Zoom or Google Meet or Microsoft Teams or GoToMeeting were available. And therefore, even though these were primarily designed for corporate use, they were adopted by schools and teachers. There were a lot of problems, obviously. There was very little teacher training. I think if Sam had been there, she could have very quickly gotten people up to speed, but that wasn't the case, unfortunately. Obviously, you have bandwidth issues. We just saw a little bit a few seconds ago. You have hardware issues. A lot of students have tablets, and sometimes these video conferencing platforms were not optimized for things like tablets or mobile phones. And an interesting thing I found out about, I wasn't aware of this, but the fact of being on a webcam all the time for students creates a sort of webcam fatigue, where the eye of the camera is always on you, and so a session of a few hours really feels very long, because it's not, even though in class you're visible to the teacher's eye is not directly on you all the time. So there's that phenomenon as well. And what I like to do is make the distinction between that, okay, which is a use of technology applied to education, even though it wasn't designed for it, and which we can call remote learning, and compare that with digital learning, which is very different. Digital learning are digital platforms designed from the ground up to, for education. So they tend to be subject specific. A bunch of innovators get together and say, we think math can be taught, in a different way. We think history should be taught in a more interactive way. In our case, it was languages. So these are really specifically designed for education, often for a specific age group within education. Ours is from 13 to 25. These are services which have been developed over many years. Ours has been in development really for the past 11 years. And so, you go through many versions of it. We're on our third version. You implement various types of solutions. You do trial and error. You have a beta testing we beta tested the first version with 25,000 learners. So, these are things which are becoming fine-tuned. They are services which integrate a flexible kind of pedagogy. The people who create these services try to build in flexibility so that it's not like a teacher manual, but that it allows teachers to use them in different ways according to their preferred teaching style, their pedagogical approach, how they feel comfortable with students. And for the most part, they are really focused on learner engagement in a way that a textbook cannot be. And that's because of the natural interactivity that comes with web platforms, the fact that students can use them on a variety of connected devices. They tend to have short sessions, which is something which helps retain information and attention. They integrate learning games. They incorporate gamification to further engage students and motivate them. So just to create in your mind a big distinction between remote learning, which is essentially video conferencing applied to education, and digital learning, which is which are services created from the ground up for education. And the two of them can be used together, as we're pretty much doing right now. So, before we get into the community aspect, how to create community, I just want to go a little bit further from the, sort of COVID situation by saying, okay, now we're in a new world where in many, if not most parts of the world, students are primarily using online platforms for learning because of the pandemic. And so, given the constraints that we just talked about, how can we make language learning specifically How can we make it simpler and more effective? Well, we talked about gamification as a way of creating learner motivation, and that applies to tweens, teens, young adults, and even adults. You have now a lot of gamification in the corporate training market. Authentic content, which is really part of the subject of my talk today, which really enhances learner engagement, and we'll see that in a minute. A focus on immersion and self-study, because one of the things that you really need to achieve when you are into remote learning is to start getting everyone comfortable with learner autonomy. It's no longer, I think, feasible to expect students at a distance to simply follow a lecture. It's too easy to switch off, to look at your phone while you've got your screen open. I think we need to, particularly in the area of remote learning, really figure out how to move students on to some form of learner autonomy so that they're more actively engaged with their learning. And then something that we've tried to do from the very beginning is, there are a great many things we can learn from the discipline of cognitive neuroscience, which is essentially how the brain learns, learning how the brain learns. And there are things you can do to really maximize learning effectiveness. And this is particularly important for teens and young adults. The human brain starts really going through major physiological changes starting at about age 13. And it doesn't really stop, especially for boys, until age 25. And it's essentially a total rewiring of the human brain, to reflect what experience tells them is most useful. So, it's easy to forget when we're teaching teens and young adults that their brains are going through massive change. And if we can use that to our advantage, then we're going to achieve more learning effectiveness. So very quickly, just to cover those off before we move on to talking about community. What do we mean by gamification? Well, that's simply applying kind of gaming mechanisms to enhance learner motivation. And that's where it's interesting that my co-founder and I both have, I've had experience in the in video games, both on computers and mobile phones, because from that experience, it comes really an awareness of how young people are motivated. For example, in the school system in traditional education, you take a test, you study a subject, you take a test, and then your grade is your grade. That's it. Sometimes you even fail. And that's really the opposite of the way games work, video games or interactive games, because in gaming, you learn through failure. If you're playing, Mario Kart and you do your first lap and you crash, and then you do it again and you learn that, okay, there's a slippery part over there, so I better avoid that. And any game is based on advancing through failure and trying again, getting it slightly better, going on to a more difficult level, doing the same thing, failing at first. So learning through failure and renewed effort is also the way that you learn your L1 language. Kids, 2, 3, learning their first language don't always get it right, make mistakes, learn new words and maybe pronounce them wrong, or use the wrong tense. So it shouldn't be revolutionary that we apply these concepts also to language learning. The other thing we get from games is scores instead of grades. If I get a D in a test, that is really a kind of punishment. and it stays with me, and it might really discourage me from going further and make me feel bad about myself, make me feel stupid. If instead I know that on a test there's a maximum score of 1,000 and I get, I don't know, 550, I know it's far from the maximum, but if I can try again and get 650 the next time and then try again and get 720, then it really becomes a challenge, and I'm encouraged to keep trying. So there's that as well. And then, gamification is all about also, things which might seem trivial, which are for, badges, medals, tokens, certificates, things which, again, are there just to give you a little bit of encouragement and represent some form of achievement that then makes you feel good about your learning. So there, we've integrated all of this into Lingua Attack, for example, but we're not the only ones. Other learning platforms have done the same. Skipping now to authentic content. Why do we feel that this enhances learner engagement in language learning? Well, it really is about currency and relevance, especially for teens. Because of the publishing cycle, even the most up-to-date textbooks are reflecting things from a year and a half ago. And the world is moving at light speed for young people. What happened yesterday is old news for them. They're browsing their phones every 5 seconds. They're getting updates from their friends, from social media, from all kinds of sources. So currency and relevance is more important than ever for young people. Also, authentic content is really ideal for facilitating conversation, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. It reflects real life language, because the reality, and we see this all too often, is that if the language, the type of language, the speed, the accent, the prosody of language that's being studied is carefully managed, is really created for learners, is sort of like really massaged so that it's easy, safe, etc. It does not equip learners to then use language in the real world, where it's fast, it's accented, there's a lot of slang or idiomatic expressions used. So, getting learners in contact with real life language, as reflected in authentic content, is important, so that they don't have a sort of culture shock when they then meet real language in the real world. And freshness of content is really important as well, again, for the same reasons of currency and relevance. So we talked about learner autonomy. I think it's important to give learners a wide choice of topics, of unit types, of lessons, to give them the ability to navigate content on their own and use different tools. They might want to filter it by difficulty or by grammar rule or by topic or category or specific titles. And one thing that we sometimes see is we occasionally get the request from teachers to say, oh, but I have B1 plus students. I only want them to see B1 plus content. And we purposely don't do that. We give learners on the platform access to content from the very easiest to the most difficult, because again, that is something that they will encounter in the real world, and it somehow it discourages them, knowing that, particularly as you start to get older, knowing that you're not given access to things that could interest you. So it is, I can understand why some teachers might feel that they want that. We don't think it's in the best interest of the learners. It's good that they get challenged. It's good that they learn that when listening to a dialogue or participating in a dialogue, even if you don't understand every single word, that's okay. I mean, I'm English mother tongue. Sometimes I go and see a film and I don't understand every single word that's being said because it's in a heavy accent, or there's a lot of background noise, or they're speaking very fast. I can still derive meaning from that exchange through other things, through visual clues, through context. So again, we feel that it's good that students occasionally feel challenged by content. And finally, talking about the whole cognitive neuroscience, there are some basic concepts. We talked about the importance, the physiological changes in the brains of teens and young adults. What's most important is that emotion opens up the pathways to learning. So when you're emotionally engaged with a piece of content, again, you're going to be far more attentive, far more receptive, far more willing to really get to grips with what's going on in that piece of content. Frequency is important because it rewires, it goes with the flow of the gradual rewiring of the brain during this period. What's seen frequently is retained. And that also plays in the whole notion of repetition with variation. So those are all ways of making language learning more effective. And of course, that's quite important. But is it enough? All right. Are these principles, are these mechanisms enough with what we want to do with these learners? Because language is really about being social, about being connected to other people. It's about communication. And so we are experts at lessons. We give lessons, we transmit knowledge, we try to create the conditions for learning. But sometimes what gets lost in the mix is this communication. It's this sociability. It's community, obviously. And so the challenge to us as language teachers is, great. I've been trained on how to create a lesson plan. I've been trained in classroom management. I've been trained in language learning principles. But how do I turn lessons into conversations? Because at the end of the day, conversations create community. In other words, how do we go from this very regimented and constrained and quite artificial feeling way of being in a class, particularly now with video conferencing, to something that, despite the fact that we're not physically together sometimes, we're still connected, we're still communicating, there's still a feeling of belonging, which is really, the topic of this entire conference. Well, the first thing is, if we want to really move from a sort of top-down directed instructional mode into something that's interactive, it's shared, it's engaging, and while it's being that, it's also building language competence, then there really has to be some kind of shared ground between the teacher and the students and among the students. And the curriculum is not enough, as good as it might be. So how do we create this common ground? What brings these actors of the classroom together? Well, we feel that authentic video content is very powerful in this regard. It's why on Lingua Attack we use clips from current films and television shows to really create a sort of an area of common interest between and among teachers and learners. because this is really in the zeitgeist. These are the things that students do anyway when they're not in class. They're watching YouTube, they're watching Netflix, they're discovering, new forms of entertainment. And so, this common ground all of a sudden is something that's relevant to them, and encourages a whole different approach to engaging with really the input in language learning. Because where there is stimulation via the common ground, then you open up an avenue to comments, to express opinions, to share feelings, and this really doesn't often happen with curriculum material, because it kind of feels forced, and it's on a narrow track. So, the idea is to go from interest. So, you're interested because it's what's in your interest, is what's one in your life, it's the latest show, it's the latest film. It really almost doesn't matter what it is. It can be the latest Marvel superhero movie, or it can be the latest comedy show on Netflix, or something like that. So you go from interest to involvement because you like it, and you expose yourself to it more voluntarily. You're connecting with it. You're then through the exercises around it, you're engaging with it, learning at the same time. And when you then can sort of project that into a communicative context, you are creating community. And that's very, very important. So, and that's very hard to do if you go back to the very beginning and there's no interest. Because if there's no interest, if learners are bored by the material, or simply don't find it relevant to themselves, it's very hard to then achieve this chain reaction that does lead to community. And in that regard, even despite the whole distance learning imposed by the current pandemic crisis, the whole flipped classroom approach really comes into play. It's been around for a long time, but particularly now, it's important, because what you want is students, learners, to really absorb on their own input that stimulates them, that they find interesting, that's current, that's relevant to them. And then you want them to bring their own feelings about that content, their own ideas, their own reactions into a social setting, even if that's an artificial social setting through a video conference. And again, that's very hard to achieve if you don't have that authentic input, which is really driving their interest. So even in a context like this, where you're bringing people together, not physically but through a shared video link, if the input through authentic content, and particularly video content, I mean, with obviously throughout their education, they're seeing a lot of printed material as well. But when you think of it, video really is the communications medium of today. And when you're talking about teens or young adults, they really take their information and entertainment in the form of video. Of course, they read books. Of course, they might read a magazine, or at least flip through it. But video is so much more powerful, which is why we have a focus on it on the platform. So the flipped classroom, I think we've all in our teacher education days have been exposed to the whole concept of flipped classroom, but it's worth revisiting because it is particularly powerful today in the present context. So that was the first sort of principle creating community that I wanted to talk about. The second one is, when you think of it, and everyone talks about 2020 as, this insane year where everything happened at once. And we forget that, if we're feeling it, you can imagine with the heightened, I guess, sensitivity to things typical of teenagers and young adults, they're feeling it even more. They're living through, obviously this COVID crisis and all the changes, all the restrictions, all the alarm that it causes. But in parallel, we're already living in a world of uncertainty and rapid change, technological change. Will robots replace workers? Will the job my father or mother did still be around? As a job option, professional option when I graduate from university. Is what I'm learning going to be relevant in 5 or 10 years? Conflict among countries, divided nations, all these things. And that can create a sense of isolation, particularly if you're in a confined or quarantined type situation. And of course, a general feeling of anxiety, which young people feel anyway, and they are feeling particularly now. So, we have to keep that in mind. And that's why, aside from entertainment-oriented authentic content, it's also important, we feel, to integrate, current events, things that are happening around them, and to, not shy away from those conversations, but to really leverage them to open up communication with students. Because when we do that, again, they're not only learning, but they're somehow feeling less alone in their feelings about what's happening in the world. And if we allow them to express themselves and talk about things and react to them, they do feel heard and supported, by the teacher, by the school, by the other students. And of course, this whole process of talking about things, of reviewing them, of sharing feelings about them, really does foster a sort of like, sense of community within the classroom, even if that classroom is virtual, through a video conference. So, we've seen clips from films and TV series, or even pop music in some cases. That's great for engagement and the conversations around those, the sense of interest, create community. But then also, these current events, whether it be racial tensions in America, whether it be technological change, or the pandemic itself, or ecology and global warming, all of these things, again, can be used to create a sort of foundation of shared feeling, which creates a sense of community. And when we do that, we then find that it does open up opportunities for students to start sharing more and talking about subjects they care about, with or without teacher coaching and support. And the third and final major thing that I wanted to talk about is maybe spilling over the ambition to create a community from the classroom, from the teacher and students and among students, into something bigger. And this is quite important, I think, because students of that age, from their early teens all the way through to their mid-20s, are figuring out who they are, where they're going, not so much, but who they're becoming. And if we can somehow bring language learning, bring learning English from an academic subject into a vector of identity. If they can start to feel that with English, they can really become part of and belong to a much wider community of English language speakers, maybe 2 billion in the world. It's the language of commerce. It's the language of science. It's the language of travel. So if they can feel part of that community, because they start to become more comfortable with English, because they start to think of themselves as English speakers, or they can understand English, or they can navigate in English. That's very, very important for them, not only for language learning, but also for their sense of self and their place in the world. And again, that's another way where we can leverage a feeling of community to back up and reinforce learning. So the two kind of support each other. And I want to finish here because I do want to leave some time to talk and take questions and discuss things. Just as a reminder, why is all of this important? Well, for reasons which are just highlighted here, but there's so much behind it. Building a sense of community is important because it increases student motivation and self-esteem, and a happier, more confident learner is a more effective learner. It can reduce anxiety and maximize interaction between students. Overall, it just makes teaching and learning more enjoyable, both for the teacher and for the students. They feel that they have a common purpose. They're there for the same reason. They're engaged in the same effort. It helps build empathy, which is very important, particularly as students may feel more isolated than they normally would. And it contributes to a sense of normalcy, which is so important for the reasons that we covered just now. So I'd like to open things up. All you have to do is unmute yourself if you are on mute, and you can turn your camera on or leave it off. But I'd really like to hear from the people present how they try to create community in their classroom, whether they use authentic content, how they use it, and generally what their experiences are, and any questions that you might have for me.
So does everybody want to unmute themselves and kind of you can just kind of talk freely, ask questions, tell your own experience.
Hello.
Hi, Chigo.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Chieko Mimura from Japan, the local national university. And thank you so much for your presentation, and everything was really, really, I really understand, because we are doing remote teaching and we have so many problems and so on. So I think it's great, Lingua Attack. I think it's really a great tool to help the students engage in classroom activities and to create the community and so on. So I was so impressed, and thank you very much. And sorry, I'm not really good at technology and things. So is it available for Japanese students?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just share my screen, because well, I'll show you very quickly, just give you a quick glimpse.
Okay.
Can you see my screen or no?
Yes.
You can see, okay.
We can see your presentation, Paul.
Oh, you can see my presentation. Okay, let me stop sharing and I'll switch over and just very hop over to here. Here we go. I got it. Okay, can you see a website now?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so so this is Lingua Attack. Let's go to the homepage.
Right.
So this is being distributed in Japan through mangoSTEEMS, which is a part of the I group. So Ayuna is actually on the call, and she's with I Group Japan. You see here that among the interface languages, we have 26 interface languages, okay? And among them is Japanese. Oops, sorry. Yeah, where are we? Here we go.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the service can be used with Japanese as an interface language, with all navigation and interstitial comments and things. We will be rolling out in about 1 week also the mobile application for both iOS and Android devices. It's already optimized for tablets and laptops and mobile phones through responsive, through the browser, but we will have the app as well. We are adding new content almost every day. And it's a complete platform also with creating, you can create classes, you can create homework, you can give assessment tests. So it really has everything, you can learn English, but we have other languages as well. So it's a very complete platform, which is perfectly set up already for use in Japan.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any Japanese universities or other schools that use this platform as
It's currently in trial with about half a dozen, but we would love for you to be the first to take it on full time.
すいません。ちょっと紹介させてください。今、リングアタック、日本に初めて導入して、で、今売り出し中なので、トライアルを皆さんにしていただいていて、で、気に入った方から購入という形になるので、まだこれからです。
なるほど。Okay, thank you. わかりました。Actually, I'm a English program coordinator of Utsunomiya University, so I'm quite interested in it. And,
okay, great.
Yes, one question I would like to ask is that is there any assessment system in here, like how the students have learned?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So you have, we work with a specialized language testing company, and we have adaptive CEFR level tests. So at any time, the teacher can give a level test to the student or to the class. And these are, you see here, and they are adaptive. So the difficulty of the questions goes up or down according to the first answers. Okay. And the test takes about 20 minutes and it gives immediately a CFR level. And then the teacher can give or the professor can give can retest as often as they want, every month, every 2 months, just to track the progress of each student.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm interested. So I will just contact mangoSTEEMS and if we'd like.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
That's
I really enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for participating. Any other experiences or questions? Well, let me as we're closing in on the time, I'm open for questions or experiences. Anyone else actually using authentic content in their teaching?
Well, sorry, again, it's me. So actually, we are using movies.
Go ahead.
For a long time,
Okay.
we are using movies. So, but we have to think about using movies because online, we have a serious issue about copyright. So,
Mhm.
so we would like to switch from movies to the more current things.
Right, right.
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I mean, it's like I said, we've been doing this now for 10 years, and we have a lot of experience in this area. And so we try to really have a mix of everything from clips from films and television series, obviously news and current events, music, how-to videos, short documentaries. You know, it really, the more varied. We have, for English, for example, we have over 1,300 video lessons based on authentic content. We have 33 lessons created for us by YouTubers, which are on like everyday language situations. We have the biggest collection of visual dictionaries available for language learners in the world, with about 6,000 illustrated and defined terms. So there's really, really a lot there.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
And if you have any questions, obviously you can be in touch with Ayuna, but also for everyone, you can write to me directly at this email address. And again, if you want to create your own demo account, teacher account on the platform, just go to linguaattack.com and create a user account with this access code, JALT 2020.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So if there are any other questions, I can take them now, or otherwise, I will let you all just get on with your conference.
Okay. Could everybody say thank you very much to Paul?
Thanks, everybody.
For his presentation. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. So